What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and I was resting yesterday taking a day off when suddenly, like always, the internet implodes while I'm sipping coffee in my underwear. Turns out one of the last bastions of hope against the mind virus has not only been infiltrated, but completely upended it seems. This brings us to Warhammer 40K, which has just committed financial self-deletion on their own part by essentially ostracizing their own community, and throwing the lore of this legendary property into the woke paper shredder. Let's start with this article from Bounding Into Comics, which is titled, Games Workshop Makes Insulting Retcon to Warhammer 40K Lore. Claims all-male Adeptus cadre faction has always featured female members. So, this all started when Games Workshop, which owns the 40K property, showcased a new product on Twitter. Then a user said this, "Why did you make Female Custodes?" To which, in one tweet, Games Workshop cost themselves millions in response by saying, "Since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians, and just like that, dear viewer, the gates of chaos were opened, and thus did the nonsense spill uncontrollably since." Now, I'm not going to lie to you, I am not a master of Warhammer 40k lore. My speciality lies more so with franchises like Final Fantasy or Mass Effect personally. But I do know enough, I think, to at least accurately tell you what the fresh hell is going on here. Warhammer, in case you don't know, has a lot of lore within it, which is putting it lightly. And there are entire books that are filled to the brim with lore dating back years on all the races and wars that have been brewing since the property's inception. There's orcs, there's genetically modified superhumans, there's even an entire dimension where basically chaos reigns supreme. It's a weird property for sure, but that's also what makes it really cool. The thing is that people obviously believe that lore is important when it comes to a property, and they're right. And of course, when you're in charge of such a massive IP like this, you are expected to respect canon, which in turn means you respect your audience, which obviously pays for all the stuff your IP makes so that you can continue existing. This is basic economics. Yet, like Star Wars, Marvel, and more, Warhammer has now gone down the same path. And in early January 2024, in one of my videos where I covered Henry Cavill's Warhammer Amazon series, I said that the franchise has the potential to overtake even Star Wars in terms of brand recognition if they respect the source material. But this is a big blow, not going to lie. So what exactly is going on here? Why can't there be female characters within this certain faction? Well, let's look into that now. Grums, who's a friend of the channel, is a big Warhammer nerd. He's been collecting figurines and everything from that IP for decades at this point. He got really mad, and thankfully he has some convenient pieces of lore that explain this, which says, the Adeptus Custodes is the Emperor's inner guard, the members of which are privileged in being permitted to serve upon the Emperor, attending to his needs, receiving and recording his directions. These men never leave Earth and only rarely leave the Imperial Palace, an endless black hive of forbidden technology and subterranean passages delving deep within the bowels of the planet. So from this one lore excerpt, we can see that the Custodes are definitely stated to be male only when they are chosen to become Custodes. By the way, in case you don't know who the Emperor is, he's basically a super godlike man that all of humanity answers to. And protecting him is priority number one over literally everything else. If the Adept Custodes had to either defend an entire planet where only the Emperor resided or another planet that was full of billions of people, they would abandon those billions to die in order to save the Emperor. He is essentially their god. Everything they do is to protect him, and they will all die in their line of duty before even a hair on his head is touched by someone wishing harm onto him. Warhammer is knucking futs basically, but there's more lore like here where it says in the old books of lore, it is known that all custodians begin their lives as the infant sons of the noble houses of Terra. It is a mark of incredible prestige to surrender one's child to this most glorious of callings within the Imperium, and many notable clans amongst the Terran aristocracy have willingly given up almost entire generations of newborn sons to earn it. So yet again, the old books of lore confirm that the Custodes are essentially, for lack of a better way of explaining it, they're the Spartans in the 40k universe essentially. And as we know, Spartans in Greek culture could only ever be men, even if Ubisoft tried to bend that with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. There has never been female custodians within the 40k universe or lore, and basically attempting to push the notion that there has been is akin to heresy in the eyes of Warhammer fans. If someone in that universe tried to say they were female custodes, the Adeptus would just tear their limbs off and feed their corpse to the hounds for saying such blasphemous things. However, there's more to strengthen the argument that yet again the Adeptus Custodes were only men, like here where it says, "The Adeptus Custodes are the Emperor's personal guard. For 10 millennia they have stood sentinel over the master of mankind and defended the gates of his palace. Yet now the Emperor's blades are unsheathed, the 10,000 walk the stars in numbers not seen since the Great Crusade, and woe betide those who oppose them." Yet again, this confirms what has already been said and gives more proof that essentially the Custodes are Spartans, and the Emperor their Leonidas, if you will, or maybe even Zeus to be more accurate. These are the Emperor's chosen elite guards, human war machines that are genetically modified from birth to be groomed and bred to enact celestial vengeance upon the enemies of mankind. Basically, these are not the guys you want coming after you in Warhammer 40K, because you will become a human shish kebab if they find you, and that's probably the best case scenario. Of course, in response to this backlash, people within the Games Workshop sphere, like the community manager whose name is Andy Talbot, has been going on mass blocking sprees, essentially cleansing the very community he's been tasked with cultivating by silencing their very voices. And I want to really drive the point home where, in this case specifically, who Andy is likely blocking from the conversation of the 40K community, he's silencing the voices of people who've likely been collecting, painting, and consuming Warhammer content before Andy was even born. I did a video about a week back concerning the Helldivers 2 community manager allegedly attempting to claim that Helldivers has always been woke, which didn't go over well at all. She was clearly told in private to shut up by the higher-ups because prior to her comments she had things like the Palestine flag in her username, which is to virtue signal of course. And if you go look at her name now, it has a watermelon emoji, which confuses some people, but basically it's obvious the higher-ups at Arrowhead told the community manager to shut up and stop virtue signaling because it could cost profits, and likely told her to remove any political imagery from her account. So the watermelon is an emoji that has the same colors as the Palestine flag, so this is another way these people can virtue signal without actually having said political flags in their bio. So why am I talking about Helldivers in a Warhammer video, you're probably asking? The point here is that in that video, I explain how community managers have one of the most important jobs when it comes to any franchise. They are also the direct communication between the consumer and the developers. If the community manager tells the devs people like politics in the franchise, the devs are likely too busy to check if they're telling the truth or not, and they just implement it. So in Helldivers' case, their community manager attempted to virtue signal and the higher-ups shut her down. Honestly, would have been probably better to get rid of her to ensure no damage is done in the future, but it's better than nothing. In Warhammer's case, this Andy guy is the same thing. He is a direct connection between Games Workshop and the fans. And clearly based on his block spree, he doesn't agree with the OG Warhammer fans when it comes to no female custodians. Which can only mean Andy Talbot is silencing hundreds, if not thousands of voices within a community older than he is in order to quell the fires and ensure that dialogue surrounding this doesn't sour more. But of course what he's done has made the opposite happen instead, as many users are now taking to social media to confirm that they are done with Warhammer, and they are cancelling their subscriptions. Some of them said things like, "Kiss my ass Games Workshop, not another penny." And here's other users also confirming that they are too cancelling their subscriptions to Game Workshop. One user even said, "I was gonna get one of the Chaos Battle Forces due out this spring, but I'm gonna spend my money elsewhere I think. At Warhammer, if you have this little respect for the lore, the intelligence of your customers, why bother? I'll stick with Old Hammer in the future." Another user echoed this, which got a big response, where they said, "I am a female player. I have Ultramarines, Orcs, Chaos Marines, and I collect various minis that I enjoy like Grimaldus. From now on, I will be 3D printing. I will pirate your books and share them with all of my friends for free. This pandering is insulting and condescending." And yeah, that one specifically is really concerning if you're Games Workshop, not because the customer is female by the way, but the fact they said they will pirate and 3D print stuff instead. And that's the thing, really, the only reason people support Games Workshop figurines and such is because they want to support the brand. But realistically, nothing is stopping any of these people from just 3D printing their own figurines and making their own armies to enjoy without giving a cent to Games Workshop, and that's a really big deal. There could easily be Etsy accounts or other people who could supply users with old school Warhammer-like figurines that adhere to the past. which means in a way Warhammer as a culture and hobby could theoretically still exist within the confines of what these users want. But of course, the money spent would not go towards Games Workshop, which is kind of insane, but it's a reality that can and will continue to expand if companies like Games Workshop continue down this path of heresy themselves. Then of course, users who are pro changing the hobby and introducing woke elements to the franchise, which goes against everything Warhammer is about by the way, kept pushing this image where Games Workshop said this in the past. Warhammer is for everyone. One of the great powers of our hobby is its ability to bring people together in common cause, to build bonds and friendships that cross divides. We believe in and support a community united by shared values of mutual kindness and respect. Our fantasy settings are grim and dark, but that is not a reflection of who we are or how we feel the real world should be. We will never accept nor condone any form of prejudice, hatred, or abuse in our company or in the Warhammer hobby. We will continue to diversify the cast of characters we portray through miniatures, art, and storytelling so everyone can find representation in heroes they can relate to. And if you feel the same way, wherever and whoever you are, we're glad you are part of the Warhammer community. If not, you will not be missed. And there's so much to unpack there, fellows. Where do I even begin with this one? Let's start with the fact that Games Workshop contradicts themselves with their beginning and end there. Warhammer is for everyone, but if you don't agree with us changing the hobby and lore to pander, you will not be missed. So then, Warhammer is not for everyone, is it? Otherwise, you'd be accepting of the fact that the older fans, the ones who stuck with your company through thick and thin, are somehow now not real fans, who likely have armies and figurines older than most of your so-called new fans who enjoy woke nonsense. This is insane to me, dude. How can you have this stance when it comes to this as a company? How dare you side with these supposed new players who want wokeness in Warhammer over the old? Surely you can't look at that and believe it to be a good financial decision. And the fact they confirm that they will go out of their way to diversify their characters and deliberately push for representation is all kinds of heresy in the eyes of 40K. This is peak financial self-deletion on Games Workshop part. How did they not see this? This is the same nonsensical approach that Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and more have taken for years now, and these properties have been beaten into the dirt when it comes to the financial ruin that's been left in its wake. Marvel's comics, for example, have been losing money for decades now due to this push for more inclusivity and representation. The movies, of course, for the first 10 years anyway, they felt genuine and great because they didn't adhere to what the ideology was behind the comics at the time. But once they did embrace the same ideology and push like the comics did, that's when Marvel's win streak ended and they've been drowning in the lake of mediocrity and diminishing returns since. So how can they not realize this? And now Warhammer is going down this path and it will just end up the same way. It will become weaker, smaller, and far less profitable, but this is what these companies want in the end anyway. It's the same mentality that is ravaging video games, and this actually reminds me exactly of what that one Bungie lawyer guy said back in March. From that Park Place, we had this article back in March titled, "Former Bungie and the Pokemon Company lawyer defends Sweet Baby Inc. says his job was to get rid of anti-woke gamers." This guy's name is Don McGowan, and what he said back in March is literally word for word what is happening with Warhammer 40K. Like, dude, this is what he said about the whole Sweet Baby Inc. backlash in Gamergate 2, and I quote, 20 years in game, 17 in the C-suite, so I'm well situated to say these people blaming one consultancy for everything they don't like are again demonstrating they know nothing about the subject they purport to be discussing. They are sexist and racist. And it never occurs to them that the reason nobody made games for them was because nobody wanted to make those kinds of games. Nobody wants your money because no one wants you in their environment. Take it from someone most of whose job was figuring out ways to get rid of you. Trust and safety departments exist to get a-holes out of the gaming environment. You end up creating them to get rid of a-holes because adult humans don't want to spend their leisure time with a-holes. You're a Gamergator, F off, you goddamn child. Nobody wants your money, go spend it on anime porn. What's the old rule about not showing tolerance to people who are themselves intolerant? That one. That's what you see in this thread, and my response is, no, I'm not interested in debate. No, I don't care if you think I'm a bully. Get back in your effing lockers. He doesn't want to hear the truth. Sure, dork. What you believe isn't true. What people aren't allowed to disagree. Have at it, champ. I just don't care about your opinion. End quote. By the way, this Don McGowan guy has deleted everything he said about Sweet Baby Inc. and Gamergate 2. Because likely Bungie and Sony, who he works for, told him to shut the hell up and keep his opinions to himself. But this is what I'm saying, fellas. What Don stated is what is now happening with Warhammer. These people hate you. They are confident that they can replace you and your wrongthink with new customers who have been conditioned into rightthink. Think about it with how the school systems and colleges work to beat these ideologies into impressionable kids' heads. They are quite literally attempting to create a new status quo that adheres to their New Age principles. They are indoctrinating people on a daily basis to believe and echo their opinions, and they're confident through time they can and will replace you, me, and everyone else who's considered problematic with new waves of woke weirdos. So they genuinely believe that they will lose money now and for the foreseeable future. But eventually, through indoctrination tactics, they will regain those financial losses and cultivate communities rid of what made them popular to begin with. Are you seeing what I'm seeing, dear viewer? They genuinely believe that your way of thinking, your support, and money is obsolete. You are the old guard, you're withered and damaged, you're no longer fit for active duty. And it is time you lay down your hands and get on your knees and accept eternal oblivion for your crimes of being who you are. This is insane. They are attempting to crush your individuality until you are nothing but another NPC in the crowd that they can monetize and control to fit their twisted ideals. This didn't start with Warhammer, nor will it end with it either, but it is a concentrated effort of the many companies that control these IPs that are confident that they will silence you in due time, control you, or reject you completely if you do not abide to their rules. Thankfully, the damage is in full swing right now. If you go look at Games Workshop's shares, they have been in free fall since this has all happened, with many users canceling subscriptions and investors likely pissing themselves because they don't want to lose money. But the investors who are concerned are likely going to be ignored, and if they do sell their shares in Games Workshop, that will be seen as a win in their eyes, because they essentially were successful in replacing even the investors who have wrongthink with potential new investors who might have rightthink instead. But one user named Laz on Twitter pointed out something weird where they said, Games Workshop is literally hiding their current stock value. Was it such a gargantuan hit in the past 48 hours that you want to hide the truth rather than admit that you made a mistake? And yes, on certain stock sites, you can't see Games Workshop stock value in real time. Some might say it's a glitch, but isn't it suspicious that critical information is suddenly not available during a period of time where it is likely being sought after? That's incredibly weird if you ask me. Even Mongoloyer pointed out how in Warhammer 40K Darktide, all the female models look like they got hit with the ugly stick. I mean, just look at these faces. Every female face model is peak modern gaming. Apparently the devs said they made the females ugly on purpose because they're prisoners. And therefore everyone in that game is malnourished and desecrated. But they look more like the creatures in that one movie called The Time Machine than actual human females. And now we got people who've worked on 40K for years echoing the idea that Warhammer can and needs to be changed for modern audiences. This is what Nick Davis said. He's a former writer of the series, and he said via Twitter, and I quote, I worked for Games Workshop for a very specific part of its history. I started in the mail order trolls and worked my way up into the studio, finishing out my career with Games Workshop, working on Wife Dwarf Magazine, UK, and then the US edition. During my time at the company, especially during my White Dwarf years, I had one mission. I wanted to share the joy the Warhammer hobby gave me, to lift up the mystic veil and show who you, the average gamer, like me, could participate no matter your skill level. In short, take some of the mystery out of what is dry brushing. I like to think I mostly succeeded in this mission, and I am heartened when I hear from now vets in the hobby who cite me as a positive influence. The hobby, as I like to call it, is supposed to be fun, a uniting force between gamers to create friendships, a social function, something to be enjoyed and shared. You never were supposed to build silos of lore because the very idea of the Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 universe was the history was so convoluted and fragmented there was no such thing as fact. Everything was supposed to contradict. That was the purpose. That being said, I am overjoyed seeing the hobby that once gave me a means to live being so inclusive. Seeing female LGBTQ+ gamers and seeing them represented at the highest level of Games Workshop toy soldiers is pure joy. I love it. I wish I had seen more of it during my time at Games Workshop, but we are here now and you've made this old white dwarf very proud, end quote. Nick obviously is trying to take the high ground and score brownie points, but there is nothing that has been said here by either me or others that state that women or LGBTQ+ people can't be a part of the community. That's not the issue here. The issue is that the very people tasked with upholding this franchise's lore and integrity have no interest in doing so. Nick did say the lore of 40K was meant to contradict, but that doesn't make any sense. If the lore is meant to contradict and be fluid like he says, then why even bother with the lore to begin with? This all just sounds like a convenient cop-out created out of the blue to explain why female custodians now suddenly exist when they never did. They're attempting to gaslight you into believing that these changes are not only welcomed, but were here all along suddenly, but that's not true. They're trying to manipulate you, dear viewer, into accepting these things, and it's up to you to realize that they are lying to you to perpetuate a new agenda. Of course, you have users like this person who are totally okay with lore meaning absolutely nothing at all if it means virtue signaling is achieved, where they said, "I love this change. Once they remove the genocidal and misogynistic language from the game completely, I might consider starting to play it myself." To which someone said, "It won't be Warhammer anymore if they keep changing it. It shows how creatively bereft libtards really are." I think it would be a great tool for teaching my students about inclusion and the importance of uplifting oppressed voices if they just ironed out some of the more problematic aspects of the game. Play a different game then. The clue is in the game's title itself, Warhammer. In the grim darkness of the future, there is only war. No, I want to play this game and I don't want it to be about boring war and death stuff. What the? These people exist, man. This is a real person whose voting rights are equal to yours, by the way. They don't even play Warhammer to begin with, but they would be interested in it if they removed all the problematic aspects like boring war and death concepts from the franchise. What are we even doing here anymore? That's not even Warhammer then. Oh boy, I can't wait to enjoy Star Wars, but only if they get rid of the Rebels and Imperials. And remove the lightsabers, maybe then I'll enjoy it. That's what this sounds like. You like D&D? Well, I'll only play it if you remove the Dungeons and Dragons from it. These people are real, man. They aren't fake. I can't believe they have takes like this, but this kind of person is who Games Workshop wants to pander to. Someone who doesn't even buy their products to begin with. The consumer who wants no war nor hammer in a franchise called Warhammer, for the love of God. It's so stupid. And of course, the only reason they are interested at all is so that they can use it as an example to push virtue signaling. I feel like I'm becoming the Joker at this point. It's as Grum said, the issue with Warhammer and Custodes is the lie. They could have changed it all they wanted. But they decided to lie and pretend it was that way all along. That lie is part of an insidious, malignant ideology that throws away all reason and fact. That is the part that is dangerous. And he's right. What the hell are we even doing here then? You want a Warhammer audience that doesn't want war, dark brooding themes, or gore to be involved with the franchise whatsoever. Then why even call it Warhammer then? This is like someone watching Lord of the Rings and constantly saying, why aren't they using guns because they're more effective than swords? Because it's Lord of the Rings. It's medieval fantasy. How are these people real? This is peak NPC behavior. I can feel it, guys. I can feel myself becoming the Joker. This is so stupid. But everything is fine, and engagement is totally going well for Warhammer, except not really at all. The master of the TDS has yet again unearthed that another company is using botting to boost their products, and yes, it's Warhammer. As he shows, Warhammer, Vermintide, and Darktide are both having bots be used to artificially boost engagement. Just look at these threads, man, like come on, they say things like, join the fight against the Skaven and Chaos, epic battles await. Who is this Saudi Arabian oil baron prince user profile that's tweeting about Warhammer? These bots aren't even trying anymore. So much chaos in action, love the intense combat in Vermintide 2, I love the intense melee combat and cooperative gameplay in Vermintide 2. Thrilling battles await as you fight against the Skaven horde. Nobody talks like this in real life, literally nobody. These bots sound like they're promoting the game more than the actual post about the damn product in the first place. I can't, man. I'm becoming the Joker with every line I'm reading. This is insane. They would rather you leave and they replace your engagement with literal bots instead in order to promote right thing. This is wild. They're even getting community noted, and to be even more based, users are citing illegally obtained PDFs of old Warhammer books as sources, which is so based, and they said, the Adeptus Custodes have been explicitly stated to be entirely male since the first edition Rogue Trader rulebook published in 1987 to the 8th edition Codex Adeptus Custodes published in 2018. This user is harnessing Game Workshop's own text against their word as proof that they're lying.
What you're seeing is advanced warfare.
This is some wild next level shit, dude. As one user said, gotta respect the absolute disrespect, but bloody hell is that glorious to see. I guess that's what needs to happen. Actual Warhammer fans are going to have to hoard all the real information in text, even if it means stealing it and keeping it untouched. Because we all know Games Workshop will get their people to go back and retroactively update and change previous text in order to rewrite history to fit their new age agenda. And by the way, when we look at who's some of the shareholders in 40K, it all starts to make more sense. Because right there, you can see BlackRock and Vanguard as always. Good lord, man, it never ends, does it? I guess as of now, it seems that Warhammer has been infiltrated on all levels. This also makes me worried that Henry Cavill's led Amazon live-action series will also get overrun as well. If so, that's 3 times now that Henry Cavill has been involved with a franchise that got ruined by weirdo producers. And again, may I reiterate, the problem here is not that Warhammer cannot allow gay players or women. This is not the issue. Everyone should be welcomed into the hobby, but I think what needs to be stated is that the hobby's rules and tenets should also be respected. So if some journalist or whatever attempts to paint this as some anti-LGBTQ+ narrative, it's not that at all. Women do exist in Warhammer. We have the Sisters of Silence, which their Wikipedia entry states they obviously exist, which says, "The Sisters of Silence are an all-female order of imperial witch hunters tasked with hunting down rogue psychers and other psychic threats across the galaxy." So women do exist in Warhammer, and you don't see Games Workshop making a Sister of Silence a man, although I'm sure they'll virtue signal somehow a certain way eventually. But fans just want the lore to be respected, and it clearly isn't. And that's the main issue here. So remember, if anyone attempts to sully or twist the words of what the actual fans are saying, it is not for bigoted or racist reasons. It is strictly lore, and that must be upheld no matter what. Otherwise, nothing matters and the entire franchise will fall into oblivion. But what do you think about all of this? Are you done with Warhammer or not? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, subscribe, share, and like the video, and thanks to my patrons as always. Stay vigilant, always ask questions, and I'll see you in the next one.